Hello, everybody.
Hey, all.
Welcome, welcome. Apologies in advance for no purple suit and no roller skates, but I'm going to do my best here. If you're here for the Shaping the Future of Self-Service with the dbt MCP server and the semantic layer, you're in the right place. We had a little bit of creative liberties with our title here,
That's right.
But suffice to say, we are going to be talking about metrics and analyst workflows. By way of introduction, my name is Dave Connors. I'm a product manager here at dbt Labs, big fan of foliage. I am the product manager for the semantic layer, and I'm joined here by Alex.
Hey, y'all. I'm Alex. I'm an analyst on the data team focused on marketing and PLG analytics.
Sweet deal. So today, we're going to be traveling through time, not unlike Ashley's talk yesterday. We were a little peeved we didn't compare notes before we actually got on stage here. But we're going to talk about the past and the present and talk about what it's like to be a data analyst. Along the way, we're going to talk about how the tools that we use for data exploration affect the work of data analysts, and how we think that work has changed and might change in the future. So to start, we're going to move to the past and think about what it was like to deliver insights in just a few years ago.
That's right. Thanks, Dave. All right, so on our journey through space and time, our first stop is the year 2017. So let's rewind back to this era. dbt Labs, then known as Fishtown Analytics, had about 100 paying clients, all on a consulting basis. Snowflake 2 had about 100 paying clients. Looker and Tableau were years away from being acquired. The term modern data stack didn't exist yet, but the ingredients were starting to form. So I think it's important to ask, what was analyst value like back in this period? What did stakeholders look for in a good analyst? Speaking from my experience, they valued things like building out a dashboard quickly, troubleshooting data assets for integrity, servicing data in the right places. These obviously aren't bad things by any means, but they all share a clear commonality. They're very execution-focused. Analysts in this era were essentially artifact producers. So how did this feel from the analyst perspective? Well, our work could feel kind of reactive sometimes. We were encoding logic into the BI layer. We were brought onto decisions late after they'd already happened. We did a lot of ad hoc fire drills and last-minute metric curation. We're at the bottom of the decision stack, executing rather than enabling decisions. So I think it's important to think about what did this look like and why were the reasons for this? It's not about analyst satisfaction only. I believe that organizations make better decisions when analysts are involved in them. And I think a key reason analysts were stuck in this execution mode had to do with metrics and where they lived in the data tech stack. So let's talk about metrics. Metrics are instructions. They're definitions that map a business concept to a calculation. And they're a shared language that enable alignment, so that when I say monthly active user and Dave says monthly active user, we both know what we're talking about. And that alignment is critical to decision making. But back in the BI tool era, that language wasn't standardized, as the keynote yesterday alluded to. It was fractured. Metrics didn't have a home of their own, so they lived in the BI layer, where the joins were. You can just think back to all the LookML explorers, Tableau calculated fields we're all familiar with. But when someone needed that metric elsewhere, that metric suddenly lived everywhere. Slide decks, spreadsheets, ad hoc queries, even other BI tools. It was easy for metric drift to spiral out of control, especially when those definitions needed updating. Metrics were stuck in the presentation layer, and analysts were stuck there with them. Not by choice, but by structure. This beautiful diagram here is the analyst value spectrum. And in 2017, BI tool gravity locked us on that end, the execution area. And that's how stakeholders perceived analysts in large. They engaged us for dashboards rather than decisions. So if you knew your way around BI tools and could write some SQL, you're in pretty good shape. Maybe some of us analysts even got a little too comfortable in this area. But change happens fast. Tech stacks evolve, new tools enter the landscape, and change it overnight. How did metrics evolve in this area? And how did analysts adapt as well? Let's find out.
Cool, thanks, Alex. So what's happening now? What's changing in the data landscape? Quick show of hands. Who's heard of AI? One or two of you, great. Kidding, of course. I think you've heard it ad nauseum this week. But it's obviously been a huge conversation topic in the industry, and I want to talk about why it's coming up a lot for people who do analysis and for analysts themselves. But first, I want to reiterate something that Alex said. Analysts are a limited resource. There's only so much time that an analyst can spend on a particular problem. And as we think about leveraging AI in the data space, we want to recognize that and commit to making sure that analysts are aligned to super high-value work at your organization. And as Alex mentioned, they're not today. The promise of BI tools for a long, long time has been the mythical self-service analytics, which would actually make use of this limited resource so that one analyst could power many insights and many stakeholders. If you just set up your LookML just right, everyone's going to be able to self-serve all the metrics that they need. And that's often turned out to not be the case. I think most of you have had experiences like this. For a person to get an independent insight from a BI tool, first of all, they need to have access. They need to learn the UI, learn the information architecture, and most critically, understand how the widgets that they see on the screen, the metrics and dimensions, actually map back to the business context that they need in order to self-serve the insight. And this is when someone would actually turn to the most powerful BI tool in the industry, which is Slack. And they would type a message to the analyst and send a quick natural language prompt like, where do I find out about this metric? Can you pull a quick number for me? It's a lot easier for that person to just ask the question to the person, or resource, I guess, if I'm going to dehumanize you, Alex, a little bit, that has all the context that they need. And this gravity kind of pulling analysts toward, stakeholders pulling the analyst into the BI tool to help troubleshoot and help guide is another reason why analysts are kind of trapped at the end of the value spectrum here. It continues to pull them towards the BI tool. Mm-hmm. But AI presents a new opportunity here. LLMs themselves have a natural language interface. So why not allow business users to ask those questions directly to an LLM, an AI system, rather than flooding Alex's inbox here? This is actually, obviously, the interface that many people prefer. And it avoids the need to do a lot of bespoke training or access gathering in the BI layer. Need an answer? You just have to ask. And we've heard this from a lot of our customers and our customer advisory board that this is a major AI initiative. I had, I don't know, maybe a dozen customer meetings yesterday, and I talked about this with literally every single one of them. And in fact, we haven't just heard it from our customers, but we actually have heard it from you all as well. When we sent out our state of analytics engineering, I can't remember if it's the analytics engineer or analytics engineering, either way. We send out this survey every year to kind of get a pulse check on what's going on in the industry and inside of the community. And 57% of you responded that you either think that AI will facilitate self-service exploration, or you're already actively investigating building out agentic use cases within your organizations to help bridge this gap. We've seen a lot of interest from community members. I don't know if the RAMP folks are here today, but they've been posting a lot about their really cool agentic Slackbot agent, and it's shown that they have been able to triage 10 times the number of requests that they otherwise would have on a one-to-one basis. So it's pretty clear that there's a bit of a sea change going on here. It kind of begs the question, though, what's the right way to build these agents, right? How do we effectively build an AI system that can connect business users to the data that they need to drive the decisions that they need to make? There's been some investigation here. There's kind of, I think the whole industry is sort of in this experimentation stage. And there's been a lot of research about what the most accurate system is to get the correct, validated, governed answers out of a chat with your data experience for conversational analytics. And there's basically two real attempts that have been, or two strategies that have been widely publicized. The first is called text to SQL, and the other is using semantics delivered via MCP. Text to SQL is the approach where you basically just prompt an LLM with a lot of your warehouse metadata, think table names, descriptions, column information, and then the question that you want to ask, and have the LLM write a SQL query that can return you a result. And it works pretty well. I think that people have some promising results. But the nuance is that LLMs are actually guessing at the business logic, right? The SQL code itself may or may not be perfectly accurate. You may get to 85% accuracy, but you're missing that last 15%. Alternatively, a growing consensus in the industry is the strategy to use a semantic layer, which is a governed set of metrics that analysts are curating for your business to give LLMs a structured interface to access the data. And it removes the need for LLMs to actually do any independent development of business logic. And instead, they can make use of the hard work of the analysts who have curated this governed data set. And it's accessed via the MCP protocol. Just a little side note on the MCP protocol. This is a kind of new emerging standard within AI systems that allow LLMs to call tools and have capabilities delivered to them that are, again, governed and verified and not just sort of guesswork on the part of the LLM. And the results so far have been very clear. Semantic layers outperform text to SQL in terms of accuracy in nearly every test. Our DX team, a year or so ago, did an experiment about how accurate responses to business questions are when performing text-to-SQL versus semantic layers. And semantic layer was able to way outperform the text-to-SQL in terms of accuracy. And so the industry is kind of aligning on the need for organizations like yours to spend the time to define the metrics to ensure accuracy and trust within the LLM systems, because that is kind of the currency that we are going to be most in need of as we move into this AI world, right? Trust is kind of at the core of that. So let's recap really quickly what we've learned. Analyst resources are limited, and we want to devote the people, the human energy, to the most impactful thing for organizations. Companies see AI a huge opportunity here to bridge the gap between stakeholders and data, and AI needs semantics to get reliable metrics out to the business users. So what does that mean for Alex? What does this mean for analysts at this stage?
All right, so 2017 was the rise of the modern data stack. 2025 was the rise of AI, and now it's 2049. And in case you're unfamiliar, that's a reference to Blade Runner. We didn't really work that in too much, kind of halved it in there. But
no replicants up here.
That's right. And in reality, that future is coming a lot sooner than a quarter century from now. In this age, BI didn't become self-serve, AI did. And that's where our story about metrics picks up. So like Dave was saying, with AI and a governed semantic layer, the center of gravity has shifted. Metrics are finally first class. They're ripped out of the BI layer and brought upstream into the semantic layer. Analysts aren't stuck down in the presentation layer anymore, and metrics aren't built reactively. They're curated upstream in a single source of truth. Now AI has what it needs to execute data tasks, and analyst agents in our Slack are unlocking new levels of engagement with our stakeholders. With AI focused on execution, analyst bandwidth opens up to focus on higher impact work. So in a way, AI doesn't replace analysts, it enables them. And something else happens too. With metrics defined upstream, there's this friction that's created. Teams have to reconcile with metrics much earlier in the problem-solving process. And analysts are perfectly positioned to enable those conversations, to lead stakeholders in these engagements. This is the future of analysts. The trusted advisor. We're no longer just translating requests into dashboards. We're helping stakeholders make sense of the business and map it to metrics that actually matter. We're in the room when strategy's set, not when it's already done. Because there's some things that AI can't do. LLMs can't sense the tension between marketing and sales. They can't predict the VP's next request, and they can't build the relationships with our stakeholders. That's the human part. That's where analysts shine in 2049. So now analysts can focus on the skills that really matter as they up-level towards this advisorship, like challenging assumptions, building out a hypothesis-driven mindset, focusing on impact rather than execution. That's the shift in 2049, from dashboards to decisions, from execution to advisorship. So I'll ground this in a real story. I'm sure plenty of you joined us May 28th, 2025 for our public beta release of Fusion and the VS Code extension. Here at the data team at DBT Labs, we knew this launch would be high stakes, fast moving, and cross-functional. So we made a really important decision up front. We defined our metrics in the semantic layer early. And this meant a few things. It meant we were in the room with stakeholders, aligning with them on the key decisions we would make around metrics, the ones that really mattered. It meant us codifying these into the semantic layer early before dashboards were even requested. And it meant servicing these metrics and their definitions in the visualization to enable stakeholder action. And what happened? When the dashboards went live, the questions weren't, why doesn't this match my spreadsheet? What does this metric mean? How can we break this down more? It was around, what can we change to drive impact? How can we optimize based on these patterns? By aligning with our stakeholders from the start and mapping their needs to metrics, we delivered trusted data assets that enabled action, not Slack threads. And while I'd call this a success story, I think the future looks very different very soon. AI is very quickly eating up more of the execution side of the spectrum in terms of tasks. When stakeholders can ask questions in natural language and get quick answers that are accurate enabled by the semantic layer, that's when self-serve really unlocks. That's the foundation for self-serve analytics driven by AI. Now, Dave will bring us home with how DBT is thinking about this going forward.
Thanks, Alex. So technically, we rewound in time from 2049. We're now in next year, thinking about what DBT is going to mean in this new era where AI is kind of driving the alignment between stakeholders and metrics. We want to build our product in a way that aligns with that workflow and empowers that future, and empowers analysts to move up the stack and sit in a more strategic seat, empowering their organizations instead of doing menial work that isn't super high value. So our vision, on the next slide, is to provide the structured context layer for conversational analytics. You heard yesterday that we have open sourced metric flow. We want to build on this open standard with partners in the ecosystem to make sure that we are creating a unified metrics workflow that can power conversational analytics across the industry. We initially invested in the semantic technology during this BI era a few years ago with the acquisition of Transform, which is where metric flow came from. But I don't think anyone actually understood how critical it was going to become for the AI future. So we want to make sure to continue to invest in this for you all, to make sure that we are delivering metrics for any of the use cases that you are building out with LLMs. And many of you have probably also seen the announcements about the open semantic interchange. As I mentioned, we're going to be working with partners to kind of define a standard so that you need to worry less about where metrics are defined, and you can make use of common metric definitions in whatever consumption experience that you like. And on the other end of the spectrum, we want to create AI-powered experiences for those stakeholders to create the actionable insights from those natural language questions. You saw the launch of DBT agents. I'm going to talk about that again in just a moment. And we're looking to extend that experience to where stakeholders do their work, including Slack, everyone's favorite BI tool, so that there's wider access and easier access for everyone to access metrics at your organization that are trusted, governed, and well-defined by the people who know the data the best, the analysts. So we want to make sure that we're building products for analysts to create and curate trusted metrics. Obviously, analysts are more effective when they're strategically aligning your organization to define the metrics that matter and not babysitting dashboards. And LLMs, we don't want to encourage them to develop their own metric definitions themselves. Instead, we want them to be the interface for business stakeholders to get access to that data. So a very, very short demo that I wish was a little bit longer and maybe even looped because it's like a 10-second video, but this is our new analyst agent that we're building out in DBT Insights within Platform. This is built on top of our, oops, oh no.
Could you hit play for us in the back?
It doesn't look quite like that in the product.
You would think the pre-recorded demo would be a little smooth.
Is there any way to play that video? Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. So you can see here a natural language question entered into DBT Insights. The agentic experience that we built out here is indeed built on top of MCP tools. So the LLM knows how to access metric definitions in your semantic layer, figure out what dimensions are available, structure a query. I want to run that back one more time. And then deliver directly to you a trusted data set that you can make use of in DBT Insights to generate a chart, bookmark it, share it with your stakeholders, and quickly get the context that you need to make a quick decision. Again, this is built on top of MCP, which is a open source MCP server that is available to all of you. And also there's a remote one if you want to be able to auth into our platform experience that empowers your LLM with smarter tools to do the tasks that you want, that DBT users will want to deliver to their stakeholders. So in this case, we're seeing listing through semantic layer metadata, but suffice to say that we're continuing to invest in the MCP to make LLMs the most capable tools that they can be, built on top of the powerful context that you all have encoded in your DBT projects and we can make available to your agents. Lots of folks are starting to build their own agents on top of this MCP technology. We're pretty excited about where this could go. We kind of cruised through our content today. So quick call to action, that analytics engineering report that I mentioned, the big 57% number, is downloadable now. There's a lot of cool insights, and I hope to encourage participation from all of you in the coming years as we continue to get a pulse check and see what you all want. This is where we get a lot of feedback about how the art of being an analyst and an analytics engineer is evolving, so please take a look. We have a breakout session on this content in I think,
12:45?
2 hours or so. So we hope to see you back there to have a bit of a roundtable discussion to see how AI is affecting your organizations already, where semantics and metrics currently live at your organization and how you manage those things. We're hopeful to kind of have a nice dialogue about this content. But until then, I think that's that.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you so
us.
much, everybody.